Good afternoon, and welcome to the next episode of Between Two Teachers. I'm Madeline Kronenberg,
And I'm Consuelo Lara.
and this week we're going to talk about what's happened since our last episode, which was I think it was on the 6th, last week on the 6th. And today, to give you a timestamp for this episode, what is today? Today's the 13th?
14th.
14th. It's 14th. Today is President Trump's birthday. Anyhow, it is.
Okay.
It is. I wanted to mention what happened. So last week, right after the episode, the charter task force that had been requested by Governor Newsom and staffed and run by Superintendent Thurmond came out with their report. And the most important part of that report, it was a 10-page report, and I'll put a link in the description to this episode on YouTube, on our YouTube site. So if you're watching this video and you're not actually on our YouTube site, the links are all over there on YouTube, which is also where you can like and subscribe to the channel. But when you read it, the most important thing, from my perspective, is the recognition, the unanimous recognition by the people on this task force that there is an issue for districts that are saturated. That's the word they've used rather than any other possible word, but saturated with charter schools. And that saturation is a bad thing, because what that means is that you're losing funding that otherwise would go to the children in the district schools. So hopefully there's still a lot of conversation around what the decisions were, but I think that there's a movement forward to address the districts that are saturated. We're going to continue to use the word saturated, and being hurt by the number of charter schools in them. So they're not necessarily talking about a cap, although there was a majority of the members of that task force did support a cap. They did support looking at fiscal issues, but the unanimity was around the word saturated. So wait for it. There's more information on that. This task force's report is informing how they're going ahead with the bills that we've talked about before that are in Sacramento. So those bills are moving forward, but I think they're being amended, and I wouldn't be surprised if the word saturated winds up in one of those bills, or all of them, whatever is going to go forward. But it's a good sign. What could have happened is that they could have not agreed on anything, and that didn't happen. So I congratulate Superintendent Thurmond. I think he did a very good job, and the work isn't done yet. What has to happen now is we have to move forward and get something passed in the legislature for Governor Newsom to sign. So that was that. And then since then, after that, the next thing that happened was we had a board meeting last Wednesday night, another midnight hour board meeting. and Ms. Laura had a great resolution that got passed. So you can share that.
Yes, we got this was brought up a few weeks ago about a CTE resolution. Was brought up by the superintendent, and we have since met around it, and it's moving forward. So we put the resolution for board approval, and it was 100% approved. And it's really gaining momentum. People are understanding the importance of our career pathways that actually prepare students to get a job right after high school, as well as preparing them for college if that's their choice. But all of that is part of this CTE resolution. So it's very exciting. I feel like it's a great victory for all of us, and just looking forward to seeing it actually come alive.
And it's going to be able to be elevated. I think its profile is being elevated in this particular time and with this particular board. And within the last year, there hadn't been that much conversation around our pathways programs. And it's important that we not lose sight of them. And they're our major strategy really our major strategy for success for our high school children. And we really need to recognize that's been true for a long time in this district. We've been a leader there. And so we don't want to go backwards. And we're not. This resolution means that we are going to go forward and continue to have deeper connections to both higher education and industry.
And I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Phillips, because he's also, well, even before I got on the board, he was having those union events where the trades came, and so that's been his focus as well. So he's been very supportive and involved in this. So a shout out to him for his support.
Right.
This is
Right.
something important
And the
to
board, this was totally supported by the board.
100%.
Right, it was 100% support. So there's going to be an opportunity now for more reports from our teachers and a better understanding of the picture of the different programs that are out there, the different funding mechanisms that are out there, and how that gets put together in our schools. And I think that funding mechanism is segues right into the
Speaking
other
of funding,
conversation
yeah.
that night.
What was your impression about the budget discussion?
So the budget, we had a budget discussion that night, and essentially what was brought forward was that there is, first of all, there are some vacancies. There's a vacancy at the top of the business office. Our chief business officer is no longer with the district, and there's an opening there. And there has been a term that was used by the county representative who came to speak about it. He used the term drift, which I think is a pretty vague term. He talked about a budget drift, and he said that drift occurred because there had been, within the last few years, since Ms. Gamba left, we've had two people come and serve in that position. And somehow his explanation was that when a new person comes and takes over that department, that there's a shift, and it's not unusual that the numbers would somehow drift. So that was what we were told. To me, it seems important that we get a clearer picture. And it's going to be revisited in 45 days. But my hope is there was no drift in the revenues. We know what the revenues were. We didn't suddenly have more or less revenues because our revenues are predictable. And if I'm wrong, I hope that somebody corrects me. But basically our revenues are our ADA, and the only difference would be if you apply for a grant or apply for some kind of funding, and either you get it or you don't get it. But even when you do that, those revenues in grant funding are controlled by compliance documents. You have to show how you spent the money. And they don't just sort of give you extra money or let you spend extra money. There is a control. And what we've learned from this conversation, I believe, is that we need to have some really serious controls, much like we have in the facilities department, over how we're handling our expenses. And the other thing is I think we need to tell our story differently. I was looking online at some best practices that are out there, and there are many. There's a lot of different strategies, but I think the clearest one we have to have is to go back in and be very clear and straightforward with our community around where the drift occurred. And it's not drift, it's overspending. That's really what it is. It's overspending. Somebody spent over what was budgeted. So how did that happen, and how will that overspending be eliminated? And the way is that you actually have accounts with budgets in them, and then you put a hard control on them. And so I think we need to be able to do that throughout the district. And if there's, I'm sure there are ways to do it. We just need to be very specific about explaining to the public where the problem was and how we're addressing the problem. Right? We're all on the same team. Nobody's just trying to play a blame game here. But what we do know is that the processes that were in place and that are in place right now are not strong enough to be able to, for folks to rely on. And I don't think we're remote. We're not at all unique in this, but that doesn't mean we can't be the people who are willing to be serious about how we solve it and how we go forward and communicate it on a regular basis. People, the community wants to know on a regular basis that we're paying attention to our financials. And I think we need to do that for all of our community members, our citizens, our parents, our staff members, and to the finance community that pays attention to us. If we don't do this job well, the Moody's and the other ratings agencies who we wind up paying extra money to in the bond world are going to lower our ratings, and our interest rates are going to go up. And that's something I can predict for you right now. So then we'll have more drift because suddenly we're going to have bigger bills. So my hope is that is something that's going to happen, and that there will be some real clarity around where the issues were and how each of those issues are going to be addressed. It shouldn't be vague, and we need to leave the drifters.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that this can be solved. I understand that there are tools in place that haven't been applied recently or updated. There are all kinds of solutions that we can take care of. You know, one of the reasons that I'm really hopeful is this district went through a bankruptcy.
Yes.
So, okay, we got a glitch here. It's a big one. But,
well, we never got to declare bankruptcy because it was illegal.
Oh.
So what happened was, because it turns out that the children of the state of California promises us that that the state will take care of education.
Oh.
So back then, what happened was, because I remember it very well,
Sure.
what happened was the district was going to be run out of money, and it was around April 15th that year. And that meant that the students who were high school students were not going to be able to graduate because they wouldn't have the hours. And all of the children who were going to go to college were not going to be able to go because they wouldn't have graduated from high school.
Yeah.
So there was a lawsuit brought on their behalf. It's called the Butt case because Mr. Butt was Tom Butt, who is the current mayor of Richmond. His son was one of those high school seniors in the district, and his name got first. It was there's a group of names, but alphabetically, they were first.
Sure.
So it's called the Butt case, and that what happened was the judge said, no, you can't go bankrupt, and that is how we wound up with the $29 million debt to the state of California.
So it
they
got
said,
to the
we'll
brink,
lend you the money.
to the brink of bankruptcy.
We got to the brink, and then got told, no, there's no such thing as bankruptcy. Nobody will ever go bankrupt, but we will lend you money, and then you'll be. And the same thing is true with.
Like a bailout.
Yes, we got the bailout, but we had to pay.
Sure.
We had to pay a lot of
Sure.
interest, and ultimately, that was the rest of the story. But that created. FICMAT didn't exist before that.
Yes,
we created FICMAT.
Yes,
and we created all of the things
That's
around.
what I mean. Like, a lot
Right,
of things.
all
were
of that
created.
was created here.
Yeah. So we don't need to. We just need to go back to those safeguards.
We need
and
to
I think that
reinstate
a lot.
we need to double down on the controls.
Yes.
And now we're in a whole different world as far as technology goes.
Yes.
We should be able to do it, and that has to be the focus of the a new team that's going to come in and take over that department, whoever that will be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
Right?
That's very
And we
good.
can be leaders here. This is just like in everything else. We just have to say, okay, we recognize the problem. We're gonna solve it.
And this is how Contra Costa does it, and everybody will look to us. How do they solve that problem? It's true. We're often leaders. Okay, well, now we've got some announcements. I wanted to make sure I'm not always able to publicly say the things that I'm working towards, and because at the end of the meeting, when it's time for comments, we usually dismiss before we get there. But a couple of things that I've requested to be on the agenda are one is the CBOC. Speaking of finances, to try to, shave that down.
So that's the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for people who don't know.
That's true. And so we'll have discussion about it. That will come up, and we'll talk more about that. In terms of school climate, and I want us to have a presentation by Peacemakers and also BAP. I think they're two organizations that are very successful with our most challenging students, and I would like to see how they are doing that. They're not in all the schools, and I think it's something for us to look at. I know restorative justice is wonderful, but I think some of our schools need more than that, and these I want to look at those, and that has to do with school safety. And the next one is, we submitted the Arts Equity Resolution. So you can look forward to that being, distributed, and look that up. And then we've got a few things cooking up. We're going to look at a workforce housing resolution for our teachers, and maybe
the whole workforce.
Yeah, the whole workforce. We're also looking at a healthy food resolution. How do we get healthy, nutritious foods to our students? Let's see, voter registration education. That's really necessary in the high schools. Title IX, that's a big one. We're also going to look at so that we have equity with our females in our district. And then adult ed. We think that we could have a very vibrant adult ed program that could address a lot of issues that we have problems with. So so if you have any thoughts or suggestions, you could email me or just comment at the bottom of this, and I'd love to talk with anybody out there who has other suggestions or ideas. Okay.
The last thing I want to mention is we attended a community engagement forum yesterday or the day before, and I will ultimately find the YouTube for it and link it here. But the main things that were addressed there, I just wanted to share out. And what they was, the first one was the opportunity to serve on commissions in Contra Costa County. There are many openings, and we have lots of people who are interested volunteers, and we were talking about the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, which has a lot of very dedicated volunteers. Folks who are interested in serving can do so throughout the county and on these many commissions. In addition, they had a conversation in this forum around all of the avenues to try and make sure that our community understands the changes and the future of voting in Contra Costa County. So Mr. Cansamilla, who is in charge of the elections department in the county, spoke at great length and explained vote by mail and where we're going to wind up. And it's really vote however you want. You're going to have options that we didn't have before. And it's important that everybody understands that and also understands the importance of registering. And the final thing that was mentioned was the census. The census is coming up very soon. We have to make sure everybody gets counted if we want to have our fair share of the resources that get generated from the census. The census, the numbers in the census determine the dollars that are going to flow back to us from the federal government. So that the work around the census is very important, and we hope that you pay attention to it. I'll put the link to the census information also in the description of this episode. And that is about it. I think that covers.
That was a lot.
This week.
That was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things going on. A lot of things to get involved in, and we will pass on everything we learn out to you, and we thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. We're still here during the summer, so even though our teachers we're now moved into summer school, but we're in our summer mode here, but
Yeah.
we can expect to see us during the summer too.
So subscribe, ring the bell, and
Share and like.
and share and like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.